Aha! Look at
We're
us.
back.
The Cuba boys are back in town. Hey, we're back on the podcast, full force here on the 14th of January. The last week before the darkness settles in for another 1,461 days of American democracy's struggle to survive. And here in Minnesota, it was like 3 below this morning.
Yeah, it's brisk here in Michigan.
Rob, how's it
Here in
feeling
Arkansas,
there? Cold-hearted?
it is. It's nearing 50 today. But
Yeah, I was going to say to dip down into the 50s.
Oh yeah, we had 6 to 8 inches of snow last week, which
Wow.
is enough to shut Northwest Arkansas down for a few days.
Oh yeah.
Though I was pleasantly surprised at the snow removal for the first time living in Arkansas. It seemed like they did a pretty good job, and yeah. So, but we had a little snow. Whimsy had a couple of snow days, and yeah.
What'd they do? They hit it with a bunch of beet juice and just knocked it right.
And all that.
They hit it with a bunch of beet juice and just knocked it right down, and everybody just moved on.
That's right.
If you don't know, beet juice can be used to get rid of the ice. Yeah. A lot of people.
In lieu of salt.
Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
All right, so this is it. Last week of the Biden administration, which I will say, from my opinion, gentlemen, a strong start and a feeble finish to the 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency.
Oh,
feeble.
See, I thought it was
finish.
I thought it was a ineffectual start. I thought the first year of Biden's presidency was constantly on the brink of being an unmitigated disaster. I thought years 2 and 3 were fantastic. And then year 4, not so much.
Yeah, I think the thing that made a strong start was what you and I witnessed with our own eyeballs, Rob, standing in Washington, D.C. and watching a helicopter fly away with Donald Trump with his tail between his legs, leaving in disgrace as a loser and a leader of an insurrection. The reason it's feeble end to that administration was that he did everything necessary to be sure Donald Trump comes flying back in and takes over again. I mean, there's nothing that can make this administration a success after then losing to Donald Trump based on its reputation. There is not a measurement that is better than that. It is a failure of a presidency. Mm-hmm. And so sad. But you know who doesn't think it's a failure? Old Hunter Biden. Old Hunter Biden couldn't be happier. One guy in the country. Well, 2. Donald Trump and Hunter Biden. 2 guys who are just pleased as can be.
Yeah,
they've taken care of family business inside the White House. Who would have guessed?
And it does seem like
I'm bitter. I am bitter beyond belief.
Yeah, with much reason, because it seems like the Biden administration and just Democrats in general and the Justice Department have just thrown up their hands and said, well, I guess this is how it is. Jack Smith just came out and with a report said, I totally could have convicted Trump, but we'll never know.
We'll never know. Yeah. I'm reminded of I had a very brutal friend, a very direct friend with a very clear sense of this way and not that way. And he's famous for saying, there's 2 kinds of people in this world. Those who get things done and those who tell you why they didn't get things done. Which group are you going to be in? And that's how I think about Jack Smith. He clearly has said, I'm in group 2. Let me tell you all the reasons why for 4 years I couldn't charge a guy with the crimes that he committed. And then at the last minute, if I just had more time. I mean, what is this? The freaking Minnesota Vikings saying, if there was a 5th quarter, we probably could have come back from the deficit. I mean, it is just, you are the Justice Department. Do your job.
Yeah.
You're staring at it for 4 years. Some of us sat around watching an entire congressional hearing. Well, so did Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and all the rest of them. So just without excuse that they allowed this to be possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how much of this is on Jack Smith and how much of it is on Merrick Garland. I really tend to think that the Attorney General, who should have been on the Supreme Court and never have been Attorney General, should be Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland. It just felt like he always was so cautious, dragging his feet on everything. And as a result, there was not the justice delivered that was needed. The name of it, the very name of his department, the Department of Justice, seemed like Merrick Garland just never did what was necessary to bring justice about in this case. And so as a result, we have what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the American people, knowing all that they knew, chose to turn out in such numbers on election day that the majority of the voters said, give us a refill of that guy from 4 years ago, not an upgraded version of the previous guy. So the Democrats, all of us who've been advocating for the support of the Democratic Party movement, have a lot to account for and to think about, because people looked at the Democrats and looked at the Republicans, and more often than seems at all reasonable, said, I think the Republicans, after all their shenanigans, not just Trump, but all the nonsense of Republicans, still seemed better to so many people. And I know many Democrats are taking this seriously. I'm part of some of these conversations. We all know people who are part of these, and there are people taking it very seriously. And it needs to be taken very seriously. Because when you lose to Donald Trump twice in 3 elections, 2 out of 3, unlike Meatloaf would have us come to believe, is quite bad. And thank you for that reference. Yeah. So I'm at some point, I'm going to get over my bitterness. Probably, give me another week. Next Monday, when Donald Trump puts his small little hand on a unused Bible and says
Upside
words
down
that
Bible.
he doesn't intend to believe, I will then shift all of my ire to that beloved child of God that has no business being the president of the United States.
Do you think he will use a Trump Bible to be sworn in on?
It's a great question. Do you think the village people who are playing at the inauguration will play the Trump guitar as well? Do you think that will be
the Trump sneakers?
Or the Trump sneakers? And they'll be paying for everything with the Trump coin? My guess is I don't know, Rob. I was going to say no way is he going to use the Trump Bible because he doesn't even want to be near that thing. But maybe he will turn to the crowd and say you can buy yours at TrumpBible.com.
$79.99 online, TrumpBible.com. I don't know if TrumpBible.com is the thing. I don't know.
But this whole Jack Smith thing reminds me. I've been listening to the Ultra podcast by Rachel Maddow, and it talks about in the 40s when all these American Nazis were in Congress, in Senate, and tried to overthrow the government. They had a plan to take over the government, and there were bombings. The people bombed like munitions factories and all this stuff. People died. Hundreds of people were killed in these bombings. It went to trial, and the trial was such a circus. It lasted years. It was just a laughing stock of a trial. And then the judge eventually just died while the trial was going on. And the Justice Department said...
I feel that.
The Justice Department was like, do we want to do that all again? We'll have to start over. And they just were like, no, we're going to drop it. And so these self-professing Nazis were left in power and just zero consequences for their actions. And that's kind of what this feels like.
Does she say anything then about what? So that was in like the 1930s, right? Somewhere in there?
Late 30s and early 40s.
And then the U.S. gets into the war. What did those people all do? Did they all run and hide? Did they recant? Did they just go quiet once the United States moved fully against Germany and Nazism? And then after the end of the war and the discoveries of what was going on?
Yeah, I think it wasn't until after the war and after the discovery of concentration camps that they were really like, oh, we weren't into that.
Yeah.
There was a great PBS documentary called Nazi Town, which detailed much of the same thing, and it describes how people didn't change their views; they just kind of receded like Homer Simpson back into the hedges, and quietly went about their business. And I really thought that was what was going to happen.
Yes.
This time around, and not so much the case. When you have a chance to win an election a second time, you go for it and you do it, and you get a do-over, you get a mulligan.
It's incredible. Yeah,
you know what?
Today
he handled
really
COVID so well. Let's put that guy back in office.
Yeah. People say, oh, what really happened? 1 million people died. That's what happened the last time this guy was president.
From the Trump virus.
1 million Americans died.
Yeah. I really did think, and I was struck with it today, that how much I believed the November election would have meant that we could just be done with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And how much I was counting on that, how much emotional weight I'd put into that belief and desire, and how it's taking me a while to say, no, I'm going to wake up every day for 1,461 days starting next Monday and think, what did that guy do today that's going to damage this country in reputation, in function,
and hurt
in democracy?
Real people. Yeah. Real harm to real people.
And at the same time, we don't know when he's trolling, when he's just spinning up nonsense, when he is just delusional, which the man is not sane compared to normal standards. And we're just going to be right back in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we, the three of us and everybody watching and paying attention, have chosen to give him an extra week
of rent-free living in our heads.
Just move in early, Don. Just come on in and,
But that's the thing.
Start looking around.
I mean, Biden has seemed to be okay with giving him an extra month.
Oh yeah.
Biden isn't anywhere because they can't put him in front of a camera with reporters in an unscripted situation. So he's had a couple of these, very scripted moments with Bono. You might be happy to see that, Rob, but Medal of Freedom with Bono or something. But
absolutely.
Remember just 4 short years ago, just a college education ago, just a car lease time frame ago, when Donald Trump was seething in the White House, having lost, and we know now from detailed accounts how much he was deteriorating, and people were gone and people had moved out of the White House and it was mostly empty and he was just kind of struggling. I can only imagine that same thing is happening to Joe Biden, that people are gone, that his own mental health, because I don't think he was in great shape going into it. He was clearly diminishing in his age, and then just seething from his own frustrations. And I would imagine that guy is at the lowest point of Bidenism possible.
mm-hmm.
And it is going to be, because he's the oldest current president that we've ever had, right? That's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He will be the oldest person who has to deal with the most recent loss of an election. See what I'm saying? So like in his final years, all that bitterness is going to be so close. Here, a guy who I think personally has done, has been a good person until the true colors were coming out here, and he chose his own self-interest over that of the country, in my opinion. But a generally good person, made some very stupid mistakes here in this way. It's going to be sad to think that he's going to just be riddled with this sadness on him, because of very, very bad decisions. Just to go back a little bit in history, he should have, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, said, I am not running for re-election like I said I wasn't going to. Now, I'm a transitional president. Party, get yourself ready. Let's do a lot of big things. Let's create the context in which Americans can feel good. And instead, nope.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
get the quarter the
Yeah.
quarter out of
And
this
what
guy's
was
little pocket.
what was required for him to win, to defeat Donald Trump, was a compelling narrative that captured the American people's imagination about where we were at the beginning of the Biden administration, the difficulties that we went through with inflation, and a sense of that, hey, the ship has turned and we're moving in the right direction. Knowing that things like consumer confidence is a lagging indicator on the health of the economy, i.e., how people feel about how much they're paying for eggs is a lagging indicator in terms of the state of the economy. Joe Biden was not the person to make that case. He could not make that compelling narrative. I think given more time, Kamala Harris might have been able to. Or if there had been a Democratic primary and Joe Biden had not initially sought reelection, there would have been the opportunity for others to make that case, and I think it could have been done. But 100 days right before the election was not enough time to make that case. And obviously there was more people who voted for Donald Trump, fewer people who voted for the Democratic nominee, and and a whole bunch of people who voted in 2020 who stayed home in 2024. And as a result, here we are. Here we
Yep.
are.
Yeah.
Here we
It's
are.
in when I worked in sales for a long time, and one of the principles in sales that always resonated with me, and as I've trained salespeople, one of the things that I talk about is that in sales, you need to connect the dots for your buyer.
Yes.
You need to understand what their needs are, what their concerns are, and then show how your solution, your product, whatever it is, meets those needs. You have to connect those dots. You have to say, this is where you're at. This is how this will help. And rather than far too many salespeople just leave it up to the buyer to connect the dots. And I think there's, far too many Democratic politicians have left it up to the voters to connect the dots and on their own. And it's not good enough to just say, we did this, or we're promising this, and this. Got to show like this is the difference that it makes. This is how this affects things. And there wasn't an adequate narrative and or time to explain the narrative, to tell the narrative in a way that would move people. And as a result, the dots weren't connected, and people
And look,
want to
and they
make America
chose
great
that
again.
the Biden administration chose to use the office of the press secretary of the White House in the same way as it was used in 1946. Rather than putting out daily messages of what the administration is doing and has accomplished in deliverables that could be spread by citizens. Ask yourself if during the $1 billion 100-day spending extravaganza that was the Harris campaign, or the 4 years of the Biden administration, all the text messages, emails that you received, was there ever a point where there was message in the communication to you as a person? I got a lot of them.
If the
Never.
message was donate now, smash that donate button.
Just a desperate
rush
plea.
$5 today.
Could you chip in, Pally, and help us out here? We're $1 short. Yeah,
Here's the
that's
deal.
if that's what you think a message is. But instead, they put out zero communication. I am on their YouTube channel. I follow their social media. The administration, for 1,461 days of a 4-year term, did nothing to communicate what they're doing, what they've done, and what they plan to do. And that is a level of incompetence. And the Harris campaign did nothing to communicate what they planned to do, short of maybe you finding a portion of a speech that the candidate or the president gave saying, here's what we think we're going to do about the thises and the that. Meanwhile, the smartest people in communication are at the beck and call of an administration. They could ask those people to put together short 30-second videos, or there's that service that does like 15, 20-second videos or something. Can't remember what it is. But you could put out that. You could have the president or the candidate talking to famous people about what they're doing, because then maybe people would pay attention. You could have a daily little straight to camera, here's what we did today, update to the American people. But instead, what did they do? They walked press secretaries in to have chit-chat conversations with reporters who then wrote up articles that then kind of alluded to the things they were doing, while allowing the reporter to fulfill the reporter's job and be sure that their editor was happy with the content.
And allow the reporters to shape the narrative. I mean, almost every press event I saw from the White House was hijacked by that Fox News guy who would just ask insane questions. And then we're off to the races. You're off topic. You're not talking about the thing you want. And the Harris campaign really wanted to distance itself from Biden in general. So it almost felt like they were ashamed to be associated with the administration they were part of. But they did some great things. Like, all they had to do was keep coming back to the things they had accomplished. The CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill that everyone, even Republicans, are glad to have those projects in their states. They just had to talk about the good things they were doing, and they refused to.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, look, what they could have done, sorry, Rob, let me just finish this thought. What they could have done was had a team on each state that said, you're going to put out content directed toward people in each state about how the CHIPS Act, which, by the way, people still don't know what it means. They think it has something to do with the price of snack chips, or the infrastructure bill, or the movement that they did in the judiciary. Any of the work that they did, they could have been putting out daily messages in content that someone could click on their phone and watch. And they did
and share.
Zero.
Yeah.
Not a single one. Just, you have to wrap your head around the fact that they communicated with the general public 0 times. It's remarkable.
And listen, I'm 100% in favor of the infrastructure bill. We had a lot of fun during Donald Trump's first administration making fun of Infrastructure Week, and every time there was a crisis, his coming back to infrastructure. I think the infrastructure bill that was passed and signed into law by the president was fantastic. Great for the economy, for small businesses, construction companies, local and state governments. I mean, just really fantastic. However, the thing the American people hate more than expensive eggs is traffic.
Road construction.
You ever drive on a highway and there's construction and everything's backed up? You aren't thinking, build back better. You aren't thinking, oh, this is the American economy pumping. No, you're thinking, I'm going to be late and this is annoying. And why are there so many cars here? And this, everybody hates traffic and construction. And the infrastructure bill produced traffic and construction.
Yep. And what Pete Buttigieg could have been doing was making some TikTok videos about why you have to do that, and be standing out there and waving at some people and saying, let me explain to you why you have some traffic right now. Like, do something.
To be fair, Mayor Pete was putting in the work. He was all over the place. I follow him on all those things, and it was every day he's cutting a ribbon somewhere. And
yep. And how much of that did they take and communicate to the average ordinary person? None of it.
Yeah.
You know what? And here's what I'm getting at. Here's the point of this gripe. because they didn't believe that was the appropriate way to communicate. That's why. It's not that they didn't know it exists, that social media and social sharing and making videos or creating content or creating a daily little TikTok. I don't just mean the TikTok. I mean, like what you did today. They know that exists, and they said no to it. And the Harris campaign said no to it because they believed that the best way to communicate this was through the legacy media.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking is insane. Here's what Donald Trump, for all of his true, as Dan Moore says in the content, his shitbag con man rapist attitude, didn't do was he went directly to the American people. Did it as a candidate, did it as president, and did it again as a candidate. Did it today. And he's saying, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm up to, and people are following him and the message and the nonsense that he is spewing. And what did the Biden administration do? Put their mute on so that nobody else could hear it, and then turn and talk to the press and hope that the legacy press was going to somehow kick it out. And that kind of thinking is what permeated this administration and frankly permeates Democratic politics, and it has to change.
And there's a bit of arrogance in the Democrat side of, we don't need to do those things. We just have the better ideas. We're smarter. We're better. And if you know what's good for you, you'll just vote for us. And that's not how any of this works. That's not how storytelling works. That's not how you change minds, which they really didn't seem to be interested in changing minds. They just wanted voter turnout.
Turnout model.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
I hate to do this, but I just got a message that I've got a daughter who's sick in the nurse's office at school.
Oh, shoot.
So I might have to bail.
Well, just text back. How sick? Just see, is it like one of these little, I got a headache and should you have a glass of water?
Yeah. Well, y'all
Daddy's
y'all
gotta
keep
work.
talking, and I'll come back if I can.
You're going to miss out on some great rants. I'll just tell you that.
Oh yeah, oh my God! I got 6 months worth of just.
Shouldn't take me long, but maybe I'll be back and have a chance to talk about the External Revenue Service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to shut off your camera? Can we just leave it empty? Like,
I'll just leave it empty.
like, and just change your name to Merrick Garland and just leave it empty. Like we don't know where you are.
Empty suit.
Okay.
All right.
I'll be back.
Hope everything's all right.
Hey, to the podcast listeners only, that's a reference to what people see on the video version of this over on YouTube. So if you're not watching it there, you can actually see our smiling and angsty and irritated faces, which does help a little bit because every once in a while something very snarky is said and then a smile comes and that'll let you know the context.
All
right. Hey, Dan, should we put
humor.
up this thing to connect what Rob just said about the External Revenue Service?
Yeah.
And what
So Trump just truthed this out. I think this is on Truth Social. He says, for too long we have relied on taxing our great people, capitalized, using the Internal Revenue Service through soft and pathetically weak trade agreements. The American economy has delivered growth and prosperity to the world while taxing ourselves. It is time for that to change. I am today announcing that I will create the External Revenue Service to collect our tariffs, duties, and all revenue that come from foreign sources. We will begin charging those that make money off of us with trade. They will start paying finally their fair share, blah, 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 make America great again. All right.
He's going to start. Here's what I love about this. Republican president says what we need to solve America's problem is a new agency and bigger government.
Two of them. This is the second new agency or branch of government that he's come up with. We got the Department of Government Efficiency with Elon Musk, and now the External Revenue Service.
Yeah, we had Space Force.
Yeah, we're just government's
Office
getting
of
bigger
Government
and bigger,
Efficiency.
guys.
Bigger government. That's what Donald Trump believes is the solution. So, hey, next time you got your Republican friends together and they want to complain about the size of government, just keep telling them Donald Trump just keeps growing the government and the deficit.
And do you think this will apply to corporations that move their headquarters to a different country for tax breaks? Is he going to go after that tax revenue, that tax havens in foreign countries?
I don't know, because Mary in the comment Mary Wade makes a great note that Donald Trump has never paid his fair share, and now he's going to run around and because he's going to conjure up his external revenue service version of what's the senator's name? That's you got to pay your fair share. Who am I talking about? Ran for president, not Barry Sanders. What on earth?
Bernie. Are you talking about Bernie?
Thank you, Bernie.
Barry Sanders. He wasn't a running back for the Detroit Lions.
Or a comedian. Big Bernie, he's conjuring up his inner Bernie. They got to pay their fair share because somebody's not paying their fair share. Okay, here's another thing. We have lots of videos about this, conversations. You can find it on our channel. You can find it in lots of places. The federal government does not spend money that it takes in taxes. The federal government spends only money that is generated by the Treasury. New dollars in every budget year. The money they take in taxes is removed from the economy. It is eliminated, and new spending comes in. The reason we have taxes is we don't want too much money in the economy. So if you're going to spend a bunch of new money, you want to take some money out. So we put new money in spending. We take money out and eliminate it through taxes. You're not spending people's money. Now, you can say it's just a definitional difference because money has to leave your bank account for new money to come in. But the idea is not if we get money from someone else, we then won't have to take money from you. That's not how it's going to work. It's not going to change anything for the American people. Our economy is not based on, do we have enough income coming in? That's the problem with calling it income tax. People think it's income for the federal government. It's not. It's a tax on the income that an individual or corporation is earning. So all of this is not, first of all, Donald Trump is not going to start a new a new department. They're not going to pull this off. And
well,
secondly,
and he
so
can't without Congress.
Yes. It's not going to solve the problem that he
claims exist. And Yabbit says, how come nobody ever thought of the external revenue service before? And I assume this is sarcasm because there's no need for one. We're already collecting tariffs and duties and all of this.
We have a process for collecting monies from foreign governments and their business interactions in the United States. That's why. But here's what Donald Trump wants to do. And I can see Republicans wanting to do this, not to get overly wonky and boring about all this. But they could say, let's stop taking money from the American people. And then in order to prevent inflation, let's stop generating new spending. So spend less new money and only deal with the money that's in the system. This is a real question, right? Mm-hmm. Why, if what we're saying is true, and it is, then why does the government keep generating new money and not just let the money that's in the system continue to cycle? And it's because the federal government has an agenda for how it wants monies to be spent. Because once the money's in the system and it's spent once, so say money is sent to a Head Start program to pay for children, and the money gets spent in Head Start and then gets moved on through the rest of the economy. Somebody uses it to pay rent, somebody uses it to buy a car, somebody uses it to pay for groceries, now the money's gone. So now they need some new money to come in so that Head Start has the next batch of new monies that are coming in. Well, you got to get that other money then back out from somebody. So you try to take money from people who don't need it as much and are just sitting on it. That's what we call a tax on the wealthy. So what a lot of Republicans want to do is stop having the government influence what's happening in our society. Mm-hmm. So Trump, by saying, let's take money from foreign governments through tariffs and then have new monies that we can spend, is not solving the problem that most Republicans want to solve, which is to keep the federal government from noodling around in the economy by deciding how much money is going to be spent. This is the fundamental argument that if you listen to Republicans, they're making all the time when they want less government spending. It's not because they think we're overspending. It's because they think the government has no business spending. The money should just be used. The money that's in the economy is the money we should be using, and we shouldn't be putting new money in, taking old money out. That's their theory. And if you talk to people who understand stuff, that's what they mean.
Yeah, they'll talk about the government shouldn't be picking winners and losers.
There it is. That's one of their catchphrases.
Except when it's their winners, like the subsidies for the oil industry, which does not need any more help. The winners that are already winning that they like. They're fine with that.
All right, Danny Wyndham says federal taxation is used to control aggregate demand for goods and services, or said another way, to control inflation. Taxes do not and cannot fund, I think he means, the federal government. It's impossible. So you see the point Danny's making? The taxes can't fund it. It has to come from the Treasury.
Yeah.
That's the point. So, and people don't know this. Now,
as different at the state level. Yeah.
That's it. Totally different at your state and county and city level. They're only using that when you send the state of Minnesota money, it puts that money in their bank account, and that's its primary source of income. That's the money it has to spend, not the federal government, because the federal government has a treasury and it makes it. So it is the one system that functions differently than all the others. We're never going to talk about any of this in this country because we don't want to. We're going to just continue to say that the government keeps spending more than it has. Impossible, because it has the money. Whatever money it spends is the money it has, because it literally makes it. Every time it puts an appropriation bill, a spending bill into place, the money is then generated by the Treasury. It has exactly the amount of money it needs because it makes it. And because we keep saying things that are not true, we allow people to lie to us and have all kinds of versions of how the economy works, including let's get money from tariffs rather than from the Internal Revenue Service. It's just utter nonsense.
And I wonder how many politicians really understand it, because they keep using these, credit card analogies to describe the federal budget, and that's just not how it works. So either they're uninformed about the way the government that they are in charge of regulating and running works, or they're being intentionally disingenuous to accomplish certain things.
Yeah. So Bernie Sanders is being intentionally disingenuous. The rest of them don't know. Is what I've concluded. Because here's why I know that, because Stephanie Kelton, who we learned all this stuff from, used to be an advisor to Bernie Sanders. And you've never heard Bernie Sanders say any of this.
Yeah.
And I know he knows. I don't know if the rest of them know. I'm going to grant that they don't, that they didn't watch Stephanie Kelton's TED Talk or read the book or ask around. But yeah. So look, but here's the thing. This is Trump being totally Trump. And to his credit, people like this kind of thing. How many statements of bold vision did Joe Biden make in 4 years as president? Very few.
Right.
And here Donald Trump is saying, I want to fundamentally shift away from internal revenue to external revenue. It's nonsense. It's dumb.
It doesn't matter, though, that it's nonsense or that it's already happening. It's just the fact that he's saying, I hear you and I'm doing something about it. And people are like, all right, finally.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody's doing something. How about that? How about that for an idea?
Yeah.
Now let's talk Greenland, which I don't even understand, because I haven't given Donald Trump the credit to listen to him about Greenland. What the is he talking about with Greenland? He wants it for military purposes? What do you know?
I guess it's very strategic because the missiles that Russia launches will come over Greenland or something. And there's a lot of natural resources that have been untapped. But it just seems silly and dumb. Like, what are we even doing?
Yes, it's just simple nonsense.
The Panama Canal.
How about America first? Why don't you worry about America first?
Yeah. But
Hey, Adam
and
raises a good point in the chat. He says, "I hope you don't get paid to make these videos." We do. George Soros pays us. So, yes, of
it's
course.
the only reason
else-
we're doing it.
How else could we afford to do this?
I hope no one's paying you to watch them.
Send us a personal comment with your email, and we'll pay you to watch them. That's what we'll do.
But here's the thing: some of the things Trump says are just silly and stupid, like take over Greenland. And then some things are actually harmful and completely disconnected from reality. Like as soon as the wildfires started in California, Trump and then everyone echoing Trump starts saying the most ridiculous things to blame Democrats for the wildfires. And one of the crazier ones is this idea that because Democrats wanted to protect this fish, the Delta smelt, this took away the water from the firefighters, and that's why California is burning, and that's why they will not send federal dollars to California without strings attached, because of the Delta smelt. And it doesn't matter that like you can just Google for 5 seconds and realize that this is fabricated and dumb. It doesn't make sense even by the internal logic.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Just something to cling on to. It's the Democrats care more about these little fish than they do the people of California.
Yes. Yep.
It's just wild.
It is just a wildfire of bad ideas and explanations. It's and by the way, all the sympathies and to all those people impacted by those fires. I mean, just
heartbreaking.
Really, really bad. And look, every time a natural disaster comes to rear its head, some deep reevaluation has to be done, because any of our systems and structures that are vulnerable to these kinds of disasters are something that should be looked at. And there are many of them. There's many places and ways that we live on this planet that put the people who live in those ways and those places at risk. And that's a lot to look at. Human beings have been trying not to be devoured by the earth for humans' entire existence.
Yeah.
Right. And it's real and is dangerous. And there's many ways that it is. And this constancy of it shouldn't have happened, therefore someone did it and someone's at fault. And, we will see the entire brigade of this, right? We will see the Republicans saying it's the wokeness and environmentalism or somehow caring about the smelt to fish. And then we'll see people talking somewhere about big corporations and someone not paying their fair share, and it's going to be on them. And then it's going to be somewhere on incompetence and governmental incompetence. And it's going to be somewhere on people shouldn't have built their houses there and they shouldn't have been living. Why are they living in a desert? Like, we're going to go through the whole list of all the grievances and all the people assigning, whenever possible, the thing they stand against as the reason why this terrible thing happened. That's how it goes. And that.
But has it always gone this way?
Like, right on schedule.
Because I feel like, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention to the aftermath, but it used to be like a natural disaster would happen and people from across the political spectrum would just rally together. I think about the floods in New Jersey and Obama showing up to help Chris Christie. And there was kind of this moment of like, hey, let's set aside our differences and just help people, because that's our job as the government. But now it just seems like every disaster, there's conspiracy theories and finger pointing, but while the city is still burning in this case. And it just seems like either it's all happening too fast, like we're starting the process of finger pointing immediately, or I don't know, something in the waters has changed and it's just fair game for political fodder.
I think what you're noticing is real, and I think it's this, that there've always been the people out there laying blame, but the elected officials and people of some reputation have tended to not want to be those people. The difference now is that the people who are elected officials and carry some weight of reputation are the primary pitchers of these kinds of ideas and blames. That's where the shift, I think, has happened. Commentators and partisans and everyone have always done that kind of thing. Now, though, it's actually even our politicians. So to have someone like Mike Johnson so early on in this say, we're now blaming California for this, that's what feels different. Like, he should keep, as the Speaker of the House, he should be like, that's not what we're doing right now. And then let all the other people who say that stuff say it and let it happen. But this crop of especially Republicans, but also other kinds of elected officials, this is all they do. They've come in and been rewarded for this behavior and told by their constituents, we want you to be the spokesperson for these ideas. We don't want you being the one who's squashing them. I think that's what's fundamentally different.
And it just seems deeply troubling that right out of the gate, they're like, no, we're not sending money. The federal government isn't sending money to California. They did this to themselves. These are elected officials. This isn't just Joe on the street.
Yep.
I've never heard that from an elected official, that we're not going to help American people. I was listening to Tommy Tuberville rail about how it's too bad these people voted for these Democrats. Even the Republicans, they're out of luck because they should have done more to not elect these woke people, and now they got fires. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, and what they're missing,
guys,
which is, I think,
give us an update, Rob. How are things?
I'm back. Just a little tummy ache, little headache. Now,
but how's Whimsy doing?
She'll be okay. Little tummy ache, little headache. Just hopefully it's nothing. We have had a concerted effort that has increasingly become louder and louder over the last couple of decades about the evil that is Hollywood in particular, and the evil and incompetence that is California in general. We have had, this entire area of the country full of Americans demonized for political purposes by Republicans. And they have consistently said that Hollywood is full of pedophiles. Hollywood is full of people who want to destroy American culture. Los Angeles and this whole area is full of people who, want to fundamentally change the country and all of this stuff. So is it any wonder that there is a lack of sympathy and broad overall support for the people in this area? The whole thing has been demonized for so long. It makes, I'm going to make the classic, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it would not surprise me if we find out that this fire was started by arsons, specifically targeting, the evil pedophiles in Southern California. That would not be a surprise if we find out that this was some kind of, morally motivated attack. Because we still don't know yet what started the fires.
No, but we do know the conditions. That.
Oh yeah, and then
the thing we're missing is this is clear.
Yeah, coupled that with whatever started them, but coupled that with, the effect that climate change has had on on how quickly this stuff spreads, and how destructive it becomes. And then I think there's just a huge swath of the American public that's sitting back going, well, pedophiles in Hollywood, they probably deserve it. And then there's Republican leaders who have had that same narrative that this just fits right in. And, pitting blue states against red states, and all of this stuff. It's just, and frankly, there's times when Democrats do this kind of thing too. You'll see maps shared on social media of like hurricanes hitting red states, and and it's just that the politicization of these kinds of, and I'm not even sure we can call them natural disasters, because I'm not sure how natural this kind of thing is. But
I think it's a natural disaster.
Well, I mean, we don't know that yet. We don't know if it was started by a lightning strike.
Wildfires happen all the time. Wildfires are consistently happening and burning. They are a natural disaster. And even if someone started it with recklessness, because they weren't watching their Smokey Bear videos of only you can prevent wildfires. What the spread of it is, I mean, and everything about it is
the Santa Ana winds
this is
are
a
known
wildfire.
thing.
They know exactly what it is. They know how to deal with these things. That's it. I mean, this is a natural disaster for sure.
Yeah, but the lack of care for the human beings living in that area, it doesn't strike me as being real surprising that there's not, overwhelming support. I think there is from the public, but it has not been what I think we all would expect. And I think a big part of that has been the way that this area of the country has been demonized in our political discourse.
Sure. Yeah. And the thing we're missing is this is clearly the judgment of God because of the choices of the American people to elect Donald Trump. That is clear. The country has been on fire, whether it's in North Carolina or California, literally from coast to coast. This is the judgment of God saying you people have violated God's will, and God is now bringing down true hellfire and brimstone. Because had Joe Biden won the election, I promise you there would be sermon after sermon that would be spreading around right now with people saying that very thing. Right? It's, to your point, Rob, this is what makes it so just almost impossible to deal with, is that Republicans and conservative types will say this kind of judgment stuff all the time, only when it's about people that they disagree with. If they're the victims of anything, then it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah.
So to all the fire and brimstone, God's judging America, I don't understand why you wouldn't be saying right now, clearly this election violated the will of the divine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why God has chosen to take out former political leaders like Jimmy Carter and others, right? Because he's finally called them home for the judgment. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that this crowd would be saying all the time, that Mike Johnson probably would attend a church, knowing his past church experience and history and what he said, that would comport with those very ideas.
Yeah.
So it's just, it is wild.
Yeah.
And,
you know what else is wild?
Yeah.
The people that Trump has picked for key positions in the federal government. Right now, it's probably still going on. It was going on a little bit ago. Secretary of Defense pick Pete Hegseth is being grilled by the Senate for his position. And just can't believe the level of people that Donald Trump is picking. It seems like the first administration he went with kind of safe bets. These were supposed to be the grown-ups in the room. They were well respected. Most of them got through the confirmation process without any real trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this batch is just going to be one insane pick after another, starting with this guy.
And this is the thing that a lot of us said would happen if Trump was elected. The guardrails would be off. He wouldn't be picking the institutionalist that he did the first time. All the Trump supporters, they do this all the time. They say, You guys are all worried about Donald Trump doing things that he said he's going to do. He's not going to do those things. And it's the wildest world that we live in, where those who vote for Trump say he will not do the things he said he was going to do. Those of us who didn't vote for him say he will do the things he said he was going to do. It's wild. But this is the point. He wants to put people in charge of things that are loyal to him and will do his bidding, because he ultimately thinks he should be the one in charge of all of these departments.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Justice Department with under this Bondi person and Hegseth being in charge of the military. I mean, it could vary between Trump and Hegseth. They could really get the U.S. doing all kinds of things that every other defense secretary prevented Donald Trump from doing.
Yeah.
And he's not going to have that happen anymore unless the Senate prevents him.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not seem that they have the wherewithal to do so.
When do we get to the point of an argument that if the Senate does not vote to confirm this goofball to be Secretary of Defense, when do we get to the point of Donald Trump and his team saying, yeah, their role is advise and consent. That doesn't mean they get to pick. I get to pick. And he's going to be the Secretary of Defense no matter what.
I wouldn't be surprised if they try that.
I think the category there is making him the acting Secretary of Defense, right? I think, isn't that the way?
And
there's some limitations.
Yeah, and that would require a recess appointment and forcing the Senate and Congress to go into recess. There's a whole thing.
Which he tried, right? He tried to do the recess appointments.
Yeah, there was talk about how they might be able to make that happen. I just wonder about, like, you know, the playing of, constitutional gymnastics with this kind of stuff. I personally think that there's, that Donald Trump's approach here has been to, flood the zone with crazy people, and knowing that some of them are going to get stopped, like Matt Gaetz was. But ultimately there's enough crazy people that are going to get through, and they might, and it's a matter of, like, okay, who's the worst? Is it this guy? Okay, if we stop this guy, can we also stop Tulsi Gabbard? If we stop Tulsi Gabbard, can we also stop RFK Jr.? If we stop him, can we also stop Linda McMahon from being Secretary of Education? Like, it's just how many people, are they going to be able to stop? And, and I agree with Edward's comment that's up on the screen right now about how, it looks like he's going to be confirmed. I kind of have that sense too of, like, I think Donald Trump's going to get his way. He's going to get his way.
I mean, this is the power that comes with the presidency.
We've seen the media, we've seen social media leaders, we've seen business leaders, entertainment people line up behind him and, so-called kiss the ring. And, what's to stop John Fetterman and others from doing the same thing and this guy getting confirmed? It's,
Hey, did I see something where Fetterman went to Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah.
Yeah, people are really not happy with him.
Yeah. What
Fetterman is the hoodie wearing senator from Pennsylvania who had a stroke, and there's some question of, like, is he becoming Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema of this new Senate, or is he a progressive who can talk MAGA? That's like the think pieces in the media are all about that. And, I don't think we know yet what John Fetterman's end game is. I think over the last year, he's done enough that has caused some of us to really question, his scruples when it comes to some of this stuff.
Yeah, it did not between seeing that and Obama chatting it up and having a little enjoyable time with Donald Trump at the Jimmy Carter funeral, it was a pretty depressing week.
Yeah.
Watching the alternative political party to MAGA act like all is normal.
Yeah.
Really,
it's everything's on
really
fire and the little dog sitting at the table saying it's fine. Like that. It's that meme come to life.
Yep. But hey, one more week of a Democratic administration. Biden will get a lot done. We'll continue to move the country forward, and we're not going back until next Monday. And then
turns out,
should we?
we're going back.
We're going back.
Should we tell the folks about the little trip that we went on a week ago
I don't know what
today?
you're talking about.
A week ago today, the three of us, along with our friend Brandon, 1 week ago today, we were in Havana, Cuba.
Cuba. We were Cubas.
Cuba. Yes.
beautiful.
Having been back from Cuba for I turned 50 this last week, and so we went on a little birthday excursion, and I'm curious, having been back now for a few days from a place where I never thought I would go in my life, and it turned out to be a super interesting trip. Any thoughts about Cuba and what it was like, and I don't know, any reflections on Cuba from you two?
I did think if we were going to practice what it would be like to live in a 1950s style authoritarian country, we should do that in the waters of the Caribbean. So that was
just getting ourselves
I thought that was a
prepared.
smart move on our part. That there are times where you'll see structural systems that punish people, and it often feels like there's many forces at work. And then you go to Cuba and you're like, there's one single factor going on here. The United States of America's obsession with making sure that the Cuban experience cannot be on their own terms politically, and the embargo that has been brought against that country, 90 miles off the U.S. coast in the Northern Hemisphere, being politically and economically, socially punished by the United States for 50 plus years is heartbreaking. And I don't just mean like, oh, it's sad for me as an American to see that my country, it's just odd to be in a place where you're like, oh, we know why this is happening, why this beautiful city of Havana, why this country that's so positioned to do so well, these wonderful people cannot thrive. And you can say it's Castro and the Castro government, but only in context of the United States unwilling to treat it as they would treat any other nation years, decades after any threat. And now I know my Cuban friends will tell me, and I've been asking a bunch of Cuban people, and they're mad that, if you normalize Cuba now, that the things that used to belong to people privately before the revolution in 1957 won't be returned to the rightful owners, and that's what it's all about. But even that bickering is like, wow, we couldn't. Let's work on it and try to figure that out and free the Cuban people, which Obama started to do, and it was getting better. And then Trump reversed, and then Biden did very little, but opened it up a bit. Because, by the way, friends, you can just go to Cuba for another week. I don't know what's going to happen after next Monday, but right now you can just get on an airplane. I flew Delta. These two cats flew American. Just fly to Cuba. Yeah. Just go.
And highly recommend it too. Highly recommend it. It's an experience.
Oh, that too. It was great. It was great.
And we've got some cab drivers and some old car drivers that we would love to, connect you with if you want to.
If you need some tour guides.
Can't promise they'll take you to the right places.
They'll, in fact, almost always take you to the wrong place. But that's half the fun.
Yeah. Dan, how about you? Reflections on Cuba after being back for a few days?
Yeah, I mean, the embargo just seems stupid. If it was a tactic to get the Cuban people to overthrow their dictator, change their form of government, it didn't work. If it didn't work in 50 years, it's not going to work in another 50 years. So we're just punishing the average person because we don't like their form of government still. Like, we don't do this to China. We're not thrilled with their form of government. We don't do this to many other trade partners that we're not super happy with.
Right.
But for some reason, we've decided to just hold on to this grudge for several generations now. And the flip side is these people do live in fear of their government. One guy was telling us about, like, here's an area in this park that is void of surveillance. The cameras don't reach here. And so here's a spot where you can do secret hand passes of currency or goods.
Yeah.
So
and
there
clear,
is
the
that.
Cuban government, the Cuban government's not like, hey, we'll start giving people a whole lot of freedom. It's not like they've said that. So the U.S. would have to use other tactics of, freedoms to move toward more freedoms.
But you want to
point. I think it says it perfectly, Dan. It hasn't
one of those
worked
things,
yet.
though, when you get
not going to work now.
When you meet people, the people that we met in Cuba, people that for a few hours at a time or even a few minutes at a time shared their lives with us in some way. Just so beautiful and wonderful, and
Ridiculous.
just amazing people who are living in squalor at times, and because of an embargo, it just makes me think that, like, this whole tactic of embargo as a strategy, does it work? It doesn't feel like it's worked in Cuba, and it makes me wonder if it works anytime that we use it.
Yeah, is it working for Russia? Is it? Yeah,
it's just the type of thing that it ends up punishing regular human beings who don't deserve it. None of the people we met who are being negatively impacted by the embargo chose Fidel Castro or his brother Raul, or Raul's son and grandson that are now primarily leading the country. They didn't choose them, and yet they're living, they're being punished because of who their country's leadership happens to be. And it's really tragic.
And like so many issues that we've all paid attention to, no one's got it in their purview to champion this. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, do not open Cuba. Very strong lobby in the United States about that. Very few people that are like, hey, maybe we should rethink Cuba. It's just not going to happen. And now with Marco Rubio,
some American businesses need to. Some American businesses need to, because there is oceanfront property available that could just be booming.
It's incredible.
And you want to knock the legs out from under a dictatorship, like open it up to tourism and commerce, and let people experience what life is like when you can have things.
Dude, you pump a Harris campaign 100 days worth of money into Cuba, $1 billion, and watch what happens politically. Right? Like, you could get a lot of people in some social movement and what if you did it with 10 of those, 10 Harris campaigns? This is 100 days long,
And I think we all saw our first bread lines. Like, we saw people waiting in line for their government allotment of bread. And the reality
lines outside of banks, similar lines outside of pharmacies, people waiting for medicine.
And we heard that a lot of people are trying to get their grandparents out of Cuba now if they're in the U.S. because Cuba has run out of syringes. There's a syringe shortage, and so hospitals can't give people the medicine they need. And that's the effect of our embargo, that people can't receive the medicines that keep them alive.
And so Yabbitt's asked the question, why didn't Biden do more? And when I've told people that I went to Cuba, very informed people said to me, "You can go to Cuba now?" I thought that got closed. I thought it was open with Obama, and then I thought it was closed under Trump. How did you get to go? I'm like, oh, as it turns out, there's just a category, on the Delta website when you're buying the ticket, it says this kind of visa, support the Cuban people. Oh, I didn't know that. Again, here we go. Things the American people didn't know because nobody's telling them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The sheer lack of communication about the fact that for the last 4 years, you could have been going to Cuba. Now, you can't go as just a tourist. So that means, because Biden did not return it back to what Obama did, and I don't know if that's because of how Trump undid Biden or Obama's thing. I don't know the details of that. But under Obama, the cruise ships could come in. And we talked to those people who were like, oh, all of this used to be thriving 6 years ago under the openness doctrine. And cruise ships were coming in every day and people were doing better and the economy was taking off. Then it all got shut off.
Mm-hmm.
And now almost no one is here. Like the very few Americans we saw were all people connected to some sort of a delegation of some kind. They were doing some event or something there. But just general tourists. I met a couple. That was it. Everybody else is from other parts of the world. And other parts of the world, it's hard to get to Cuba. You know what I'm saying?
Takes
where it's
a
easier
lot
to get to
longer.
Cuba from the United States. It's easier to get to Cuba from Miami than it is to get to Pensacola, Florida from Miami. Truthfully, like it should just be included in the United States efforts all the time. It's just ridiculous. And now with Marco Rubio, it's going to be Secretary of State. I know it's going to open up a slot for somebody in Florida, but that means Cuba has no chance of openness in the next 4 years. I mean, I think they'll shut that sucker down on by the 21st of January, next Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if that freedom to enter Cuba was revoked.
Yeah. And we'll see what Trump does on his first day in office. He's got a list of like 100 things he has said he will do day one. Much of it harmful to people that live in this country or who would like to be in this country. And he said he would be dictator for a day, just one day, just day one.
Just for the first day.
So I guess we'll see you all on the other side of that day one. And
what do you
see
think?
What happens.
Do you think that day is that I mean, you guys that used to believe in a literal creation narrative. Is that a 24-hour period from noon Monday to noon Tuesday, or is it just Monday? Do you think he's got the calendar day? Tuesday's another day? When he's dictator for a day, what
is it an epoch?
What are we talking?
Is
it a period of time?
Yeah. I mean, with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years.
Well, with Trump.
So with Trump, a day could be like 1,461 days.
The first day felt like 2 weeks.
I declare this day will last 5 years. Yabbit says. All right. Well, nice to be back with you all. Good to see you, Yabbits, here in the chat. Trader Todd, USA. Appreciate that. I don't know if
Word
that
up
means
to Cuba.
Edward, Jim.
Yeah. Wasn't there a couple
Danny,
of Alfred?
Adam was with us.
What a great name, Alfred.
Where was the big comment? No to theofascism. Thank you for the very long comment. Did you have? I always wonder on these super long comments. Oh, this one has footnotes in it, so it must have just been copied and pasted in it. Yeah.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Just
Mary,
M. I like just M.
Yeah.
If you don't know what we're doing and you're just on the podcast, we're scrolling through the list of comments that come in from Facebook and Twitch and Twitter and YouTube. We see them in a little screen on the side. And by the way, Dan, great looking setup. I know no one's commented on it yet. You're inside.
Can't believe no one's commented. Look at this setup.
Yeah. Looks great.
I got a little light in the back.
That little light over there. Wow. Real touch of class. Real touch of class. They call that a hair light in the industry, don't they? Always come from behind like that. Yeah. Why do you have a light like that that's got the little flippers on there?
Well,
did you steal that from somewhere? Did you buy that at a
thrift
shop?
store? No, I went to Goodwill and they had just a bundle of old lights like that for like $30. So I got a whole lighting setup.
Well done.
Wow. Are they? So there's a hot bulb in there, like that thing's 400 degrees behind you.
No, I just put an LED bulb in there, but
Okay. Yeah. It looks because those old ones, man. Those
right.
metal would get hot.
I can't touch it.
Yeah, it just looks hot looking at it. Well, thanks everybody. We'll be back when we can.
Breaking news! Breaking news!
Ooh, Mr. Cotta,
Just
Mr.
clicked
Cotta.
on the Drudge Report, and here near the top of the Drudge Report, Biden to remove Cuba from terror list.
Oh, interesting.
Biden moves to lift state sponsor of terrorism designation for Cuba, part of a deal to free prisoners.
Huh.
Biden administration on Tuesday is notifying Congress of its intent to lift the U.S. designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism. Again, when has Cuba been a state sponsor of terrorism?
Yeah. Also, we didn't even get into
Deal
Guantanamo
facilitated by the
Bay.
Catholic Church to free political prisoners on the island. Fantastic. So,
well,
there you go.
We've been saying
Fingers
all along.
crossed,
We know they monitor this podcast. We've known it, and we're glad to finally get confirmation.
We just made that happen. We just made that happen.
You're welcome, Cuba prisoners and non-terror actors in Cuba.
We do this in support of the Cuban people.
So does that mean like for 1 week they'll then have a deal and then Trump will immediately put it back on?
For sure.
100%.
What does he even do?
100%.
Why wait to the last week to do that?
There you go. Well, because Hunter had to be taken care of first.
Just the political cowardice of like, I can't do this thing.
We should give credit to Abe Bonowitz and his hard work at Death Penalty Action to move the Biden administration to not go all the way to closing federal death penalty sentences as a action of the government, but to at least take the great majority of the people who are currently threatened with death by the federal government and to make it so those people won't be executed. I think 3 or 4 or 5 people are still left there.
It was like all but 2, but maybe it is a couple more.
All but 2? Okay. I thought it was a...
Yeah, that was good to see.
Painful. Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, good for you, Abe. Yeah. Good work. Close the death house has still been the call. Like, get the United States off the list of a half a dozen or a dozen nations in the world that execute its own citizens.
Mm-hmm.
The United States and all the bad countries have that in common.
The company you keep. Good to see you too, Jim.
There you go. Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
And we'll see everybody
back next week if we can muster the gumption to do it.
We'll be back when the
Evaluate
darkness is falling.
the day of dictator.
And if Elon and all the others keep the internet on.
I think we should be on Monday night, Dictator Day. And just say a thing or two. Just wind up the whole podcast, and just give our profound thanks to the administration for all the hard work that they did. We can do that on Monday too.
Yeah.
Complain right now and then thank them and then move on to the.
I'll prepare a list of predictions. We can have some
classic prediction list episode. All right, everybody.
That's a good one.